It was a typical Friday evening at Rusty Fork Diner, a small, family-owned place tucked into a quiet corner of the city. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a harsh glow over the worn vinyl booths and sticky tables. The smell of fried food mixed with the faint odor of old grease in the air. Normally, it was a place of comfort and routine, a haven for the night shift workers, college students, and late-night wanderers looking for cheap food and warm coffee. Tonight, however, the air was tense, charged with an energy that Emily could feel creeping up her spine. She moved quickly behind the counter, balancing a tray stacked with drinks, plates of food, and cutlery. Emily was no stranger to pressure. At 22, she had worked at the diner for 3 years, juggling college classes and part-time shifts to pay her rent. But tonight felt different, heavier somehow. Her manager, Derek, a man in his 40s with a sharp jawline and a permanent scowl, was already pacing near the cash register. His temper was legendary among the staff. Emily had learned to avoid his glare, smile politely, and hope that he didn't notice any mistakes. But tonight, he seemed unusually irritable, muttering under his breath about orders being slow, complaints piling up, and customers being difficult. Emily felt a knot tighten in her stomach. She took a deep breath and tried to focus on her work, telling herself that the night would pass. She approached a table crowded with 4 loud customers, placing plates of sizzling burgers and fries carefully in front of them. "Here you go! Enjoy your meal," she said brightly, forcing a smile. One of the customers accidentally knocked over a cup of soda while reaching for ketchup. Emily quickly grabbed a napkin to clean the spill, juggling it with a tray of desserts for another table. In her rush, she misstepped, and the tray tipped slightly. A few drinks sloshed dangerously close to the edge, and a plate of fries slid toward the floor. Before she could react, Derek's voice cut through the din like a knife. "Watch where you're going, Emily. Are you trying to ruin this place?" he barked, his face red with anger. Emily flinched. I'm sorry, it was an accident," she stammered, her hands trembling. But Derek didn't stop there. In a sudden, aggressive move, he shoved her roughly from behind. Emily stumbled forward, hitting her head against the edge of the counter with a sharp crack. Pain shot through her skull, blinding her for a moment. The tray in her hands tipped completely, and drinks spilled onto the floor, splashing the shoes of nearby customers. The diner fell silent. For a brief moment, all she could hear was the ringing in her ears. Patrons froze, unsure whether to intervene or stay out of it. Emily's knees buckled, and she gripped the counter to steady herself, tears stinging her eyes, not just from the pain, but from humiliation and fear. "You don't touch me like that," she whispered, but her voice was barely audible over the clatter of falling plates. Derek, breathing heavily, looked around the diner, eyes blazing with anger, as if daring someone to challenge him. "I run this place. You're lucky I don't fire you right now." Emily's heart raced. She had felt powerless before, but tonight, something inside her refused to break completely. She straightened, wincing, and tried to speak, but her words caught in her throat. She knew she couldn't fight back alone, but she didn't know help was closer than she imagined. Meanwhile, in the parking lot, the roar of engines began to grow louder. At first, it was just a low rumble, almost unnoticeable against the background noise of the city. But within minutes, the sound intensified, vibrating through the walls of the diner, shaking the plates and cups on the tables. The front doors rattled as a group of motorcycles pulled up, their headlights cutting through the darkness like sharp beams. Leather jackets glistened under the dim parking lot lights. Helmets reflected the diner's neon signs, and the engine's growl was almost deafening. Emily froze, unsure what was happening. The bikers weren't subtle. They parked in formation, their presence commanding and intimidating. The leader, a tall man with a thick beard and piercing eyes, removed his helmet. His leather jacket bore the insignia of the infamous Hell's Rain Motorcycle Club. The patrons of the diner whispered nervously, some hiding behind tables, others reaching for their phones to record what was about to unfold. Inside, Derek didn't notice the growing storm outside. His focus was entirely on Emily, who was still clutching her head and struggling to stay upright. But the moment the door swung open, the entire dynamic of the diner shifted. The bikers stepped in, boots hitting the floor in unison. The sound echoed like a warning, a signal that things were about to change. The leader's eyes locked onto Derek, and Emily could feel the air around them thicken with tension. Rico, the biker leader, didn't even ask questions. He scanned the diner, his gaze falling on Emily first. Relief washed over her when she saw the subtle nod he gave, acknowledgement that he knew something terrible had happened. The other bikers spread through the diner with precision, not touching any customers, but making it clear that Derek was the target. They didn't need words. Their presence alone communicated a simple truth. Justice was coming. Derek, for the first time that night, felt fear. The arrogance that had fueled his actions crumbled as he realized that he was completely outnumbered and outmatched. The manager who had ruled the diner with intimidation now looked small, powerless, in the shadow of the roaring machines and leather-clad riders. Emily, still wincing from the pain in her head, felt a strange sense of hope. For the first time, she wasn't alone. She had thought she would have to endure the humiliation and abuse silently, but the bikers' arrival changed everything. Outside, the engines growled one last time before the bikers removed their helmets completely. Inside, Derek's eyes darted nervously, realizing that his actions had consequences far beyond the diner's walls. Emily took a shaky breath, watching the scene unfold. She knew this night would change everything, not just for her, but for anyone who ever dared to bully or harm someone vulnerable. And in the corner of her mind, she couldn't help but wonder, who exactly were these bikers and why had they come to her rescue? The answer, she realized, would soon become painfully and powerfully clear. Derek's face turned pale as the bikers filled the diner, their presence impossible to ignore. Boots thumped against the worn floorboards, the sound echoing like a war drum. The patrons shrank back into their seats, whispering in disbelief, filming the scene on their phones, some too scared to even breathe. Emily clutched the edge of the counter, her pulse racing, unsure what would happen next. But deep down, she felt a flicker of relief. Finally, someone was here to protect her. Rico, the leader of the Hell's Rain MC, stepped forward. His leather jacket creaked as he moved, adorned with patches that told a story of countless rides, battles, and loyalty. His piercing eyes locked on Derek, unwavering, unflinching. Every muscle in Derek's body tensed as he realized he could no longer intimidate anyone in this room. "You hurt her," Rico said calmly, yet every word carried weight. "You humiliated her in front of everyone. You think this is how you run a business?" Derek tried to stammer out a response, but the words caught in his throat. He opened his mouth, closed it, and tried again, but the room seemed to shrink around him, under the watchful eyes of the bikers. Fear had replaced arrogance. One of the younger bikers, a woman named Lana, moved to Emily's side, crouching to check her head. "Are you okay?" she asked softly, her voice a stark contrast to the harsh tension filling the diner. Emily shook her head slightly, wincing. Lana pressed a cloth to the small cut on her forehead. "We've got you," she whispered. "No one's gonna hurt you now." The rest of the bikers spread strategically through the diner. Some blocked the exits, ensuring no one could leave without their knowledge. Others stood silently behind Derek, their presence alone a warning. Any further aggression would have consequences. The patrons watched, fascinated and terrified, as this pack of leather-clad strangers took control of the scene without a single word of threat. Derek finally found his voice. I don't know what this is." "You can't just come in here," he stammered, but the words fell flat. The bikers weren't here for argument. They were here for justice. Rico took a step closer. The room seemed to hold its breath. You think this is about rules, about your authority? It's about respect. You think you can bully someone into submission? That ends tonight. A ripple of tension passed through the diner. Derek's bravado crumbled completely, replaced by panic. He realized that these weren't ordinary people. Their reputation, their loyalty, their sense of justice, everything about them screamed danger for anyone foolish enough to harm the innocent. Meanwhile, Lana helped Emily to a booth, guiding her gently to sit down. She cleaned the blood from her forehead and pressed a first aid kit into her hands. Take a breath. You're safe now, she said, her calm demeanor a balm to Emily's frayed nerves. Outside, the motorcycles continued to hum softly, a low rumble that reminded everyone inside that these people were a force to be reckoned with. Patrons whispered excitedly, some commenting on the sheer audacity of the bikers, others shaking their heads in disbelief. A few even captured the moment on video, knowing that this would go viral before the night ended. Rico approached Derek again, stopping just a few feet away. His eyes were ice cold, and for the first time, Derek felt a real bone-deep fear. You're done here, Rico said. Your job, your authority, it's over. And if you ever lay a hand on someone like that again, you'll answer to us. Do you understand? Derek nodded quickly, swallowing hard. He opened his mouth to protest, but a sharp glance from Rico silenced him instantly. The arrogance that had once defined him was gone, replaced by terror. The bikers didn't need to make a spectacle. Their presence alone spoke volumes. Within minutes, the diner had shifted from a place of fear and abuse to a place of order and protection. Emily, still shaking, looked around at the patrons. Many were staring, unsure whether to applaud, cry, or simply sit in stunned silence. She finally dared to take a deep breath. You're safe now, Lana said again, offering a reassuring smile. Emily nodded, tears welling up. She had expected no one to come to her aid, certainly not a group of strangers. But somehow, fate had sent her a rescue that was as fierce as it was unexpected. The bikers didn't linger unnecessarily. They ensured that Derek remained seated, unable to cause any further harm. Then slowly and deliberately, they began to leave, walking back to their motorcycles with a quiet confidence. The roar of the engines returned, louder this time, filling the night air as they revved their bikes and prepared to ride off into darkness. Emily stepped outside for a moment, watching them leave. The echo of their engines lingered in her chest, a reminder of power, loyalty, and justice. She realized that this night had changed her life forever. She had been vulnerable, alone, and on the verge of despair. But the bikers' intervention reminded her that there were people willing to stand up for the innocent, even if it meant putting themselves at risk. As the last motorcycle disappeared down the street, Emily felt a mixture of relief and awe. She knew that Derek would think twice before ever treating someone like that again. More importantly, she knew that she would never feel powerless again, not when the world still had people willing to fight for what was right. Returning inside, she found her co-workers staring at her, wide-eyed and speechless. "I don't even know what to say," one of them whispered. Emily just shook her head, feeling a strange sense of empowerment. From that day forward, Rusty Fork Diner operated under a new order, not because of fear or intimidation, but because Emily and her co-workers had learned the value of standing up for themselves, and because the story of that night had spread, reminding everyone that sometimes heroes arrive in the most unexpected forms. And as for Emily, she would never forget the roaring engines, the leather jackets, or the piercing eyes of Rico and his crew. They weren't just bikers. They were protectors, guardians who had stepped into a storm of cruelty and restored balance. That night, justice had ridden in on two wheels, and Emily would carry the memory of it forever.